next step, which is how to afford it. Well, good evening.
When does the public get access to these?
Yeah,
very
we're not
simple
interested
spreadsheets?
now. We've got other questions.
I think the questions are going to come after I'm done speaking.
What, for about 5 minutes?
I'll stay here all night personally.
We'll have probably a half hour for Q&A after he's done speaking.
So good evening, my name is Matt Gillespie from Piper Sandler in Des Moines, and we're the financial advisor to the school district. And I am going to talk primarily tonight about the potential for the bond structure, what it would look like if the bond passes, and most importantly, what it will cost you if you own property. There have been, as there always are, lots and lots of discussion going around, and I'm not asking you to actually raise your hand, but I want you to think in your mind how many of you have already heard something throughout your community that is completely outrageous, and you know that there's no way that that is true. I've read it myself, and I don't even live in your district, and I've seen this information. So hopefully what I provide tonight is going to provide many of you with some factual information to take back to your homes, your friends, your neighbors that aren't here tonight, so that we can stop that type of gossip and misinformation. I am not here tonight to tell anybody that this is the right plan, that you should vote yes or you should vote no. I don't live in your school district, and I don't own property here, and I don't pay taxes here. So that is for you to decide if this is the right plan, if you think it's affordable, etc. But what I do want you all to do is when you go into the voting booth, you vote, whether it's yes or no, you're voting based off of facts and not misinformation. And that's what I'm really primarily here for tonight. So I'm going to begin discussing the page that I handed out to most of you. I did run out of the sheet, so those of you that came late, there wasn't a page there, unfortunately. Some of it is going to be up here on the screen. But there are two sides to that page for those of you that got it. And this is the first page. This is what I'm going to begin talking about. This is about the top half of it, and then we'll go to the bottom half of it in a few minutes, and then we'll go to the second page. So what you see on this top half of this page, for those of you that have it, and you can get this if you want a copy and you didn't get it tonight, I can email you one, the school can email you one, or print it and send you one. But when any time that the school district or a school district borrows money that's out into the future, there are basically two essential things that we don't know, and you don't know. We do not know where interest rates are going to be next spring, and we do not know what your property value is going to be next spring, because we're always using property values that are a year behind. So today, the property value that we know for your property is the January of 2021 property value. That's the value that's being used for this current fiscal year. But if the bond issue were to pass, the bonds won't be issued until next spring, and at that time, we'll be using the January 2022 property value in order to calculate the tax levy. So what you see in the top right here is just a guess that I made. It may be accurate, it may not be, we don't know. We do not have that crystal ball. But I'd assume that your taxable value of property will grow by about 2.25%. Now, your property has not done that the last couple of years, but generally speaking across the state, most of the time the property value is growing at in excess of 3%. So you will eventually catch up. That's going to happen. Whether it's this year, we don't know. But that would take your taxable value of property from $386 million to $395 million. Taxable value. I'm going to keep saying this over and over. So that's one thing we do not know. But that number is what the tax levy is calculated off of. And then the other thing that we do not know is where the interest rate will be. So this is a 20-year bond repayment. We have seen that 20-year average rate, literally just in the last 10 months, range between about 1.85%, that is for a 20-year borrowing, to as high as maybe around 4.1%. Interest rates, especially since March, have risen substantially up to the beginning of June. Then they dropped back down, not as low as they were, but they dropped back down, came back up around the beginning of July, and since July, they have, for the most part, continued on a kind of a slow decline. Now, they have not gotten, and they are probably never going to get, to the levels that they were last fall and the last 2 or 3 years, because those levels of interest rates were not normal. For those of you that got used to buying a car and paying 0% interest, that was great, but that is not a normal world, and we will be back to a normal world very soon. So these interest rates that I'm using, and I'm just using a 3% average, it may be higher, it may be lower by next spring, we don't know. We do know that the tax rate cannot exceed $4.05. So if the interest rate is higher and your property value hasn't grown even faster to offset that higher interest rate, the tax levy can't be higher than $4.05, but what it means is the school can probably not issue all of the bonds at once. They very likely would not issue all of the bonds at once anyway, for certain tax reasons that if you want to ask questions about it, you can, but most of you can care less about that part of this. So it's very likely that the bonds will be sold over at least 2 different years, possibly 3 years, depending on how long the construction is going to take. So there's that's kind of a cushion or a backup if property value doesn't rise and or interest rates rise too much. We can hopefully still get around that. But by law, the tax levy cannot go above $4.05. So no matter what, you're not going to be taxed higher than what we're talking about tonight. So if you go to the next page there, you see the bottom. So this is where we see the bond amount, $23,605,000. So that's the number that you're going to see on the ballot. So when you go to vote, whether you vote in person or you get an absentee ballot, you're going to see that number. You're not going to see another number. So I personally have seen in some of your school patrons' public messages that you're being asked to vote on 2 amounts. That is not true. That is false. The school district is borrowing roughly $8 million. That is not property tax backed. That is a completely separate thing. That is being repaid from sales tax. That's the sales tax that you pay, that's the sales tax that I pay. So in effect, I am literally helping you pay back those bonds because you are collecting more sales tax than what is literally generated just here within your footprint of your school district. You're getting paid an equal amount. Every school, every student, the school district is paid the same amount no matter where that is in the state. You don't generate as much revenue, for example, as Des Moines area, obviously. Many of you come to Des Moines and shop and come back here. So you've left your tax dollars in Des Moines, but they're not really left there because they're distributed fairly. They're distributed evenly. So that means you're getting sales tax money from other shoppers around the state, and that's what's helping to pay that other debt that the district will probably be issuing this fall. Again, that's not for this project. So don't believe the information that someone is spreading that says you're being asked to approve 2 property tax amounts. That is not true. There is one, which is this number, $23,605,000. Now there will be another question on the ballot, but it is not related to another amount of principal that's being borrowed. It's related to the tax levy rate, to this $4.05 levy rate. So if a school district in Iowa is going to borrow from a general obligation bond, which is what this will be, and the repayment of that bond requires a tax levy that exceeds $2.70 tax levy, the school district has to ask you a second question. And that question is literally just saying, can we tax you up to $4.05 instead of being limited to $2.70? So that's what the second question will say on the ballot. Both of those questions require 60% approval. There are about a third of the districts, about 104, I believe, maybe 105, of the schools in Iowa that have that type of authority. So it's not unusual, it's not outrageous, it's not something that's going over the top. Now that doesn't mean you need to vote yes or no. Again, I don't have an opinion about that. But your district, your board, the project is not doing something that most other schools around the state, or many schools around the state, have done in the past. So 2 questions. One is asking you the dollar amount authority, $23,605,000. The second question is asking you permission to tax at that higher levy. There will be no question, because the school board has already done what is needed, to borrow the sales tax portion for the other unrelated projects. And you will pay no property taxes for that. It is illegal to levy property taxes to repay sales tax revenue bonds. So there's no chance that you will pay property taxes to repay that other $8-ish million project, regardless of what Facebook says or whatever you see out there in the public. So if we go to the next page, and for those of you that are looking at the piece of paper, you're going to flip that over. And this now becomes the very important part. How much will it actually cost you if you own property? Whether you own a home, a business, farmland, or what have you. This question comes up all the time, of course, as you imagine, and it is always answered incorrectly. Not because everybody's dumb or anything like that, but most of you have other things to do in your life. You don't sit there and analyze how to do the math for your property taxes. But it's really, really simple. These guys have heard me talk all around the state at various schools, so they get to hear this many times. But I will tell you that two of my children are entering 6th grade yesterday, and one is entering 4th grade. The 4th grader could calculate this with a pencil and paper. You don't need to have a math degree. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a math wizard. You don't have to have a calculator. You can figure your taxes with a pencil and paper. It is that simple. So don't let it overwhelm you or let it overwhelm someone else who then begins to miscommunicate to everyone. So you see the $4.05 in that yellow box. This worksheet works for the school district, it works for the city, it works for the county, it works for the community college. Any municipality in the state of Iowa that has the authority to levy property taxes, the math is exactly the same. And it doesn't matter if you live here in Gladbrook or if you live where I live, in Urbandale. Exactly the same. My school district, Urbandale, does have $4.05 authority, so I do pay that myself. So I'm going to pay the same calculation as you pay. The only thing that's different about if I lived here or lived there and my school were going to levy $4.05 is the value of my property. If you pick my house up and just plopped it right here in Gladbrook, it's not to say anything about the community, but the house would be worth less money here than in Urbandale, right? Because it's a metro area. Doesn't mean my house is nice or not nice, or that the houses here are nice or not nice. It's just a fact. When you get to a metropolitan area, real estate is more valuable. So, I will pay more dollars than you would pay if I had a $4.05 levy. That $4.05, as I said, that could be the city. For those of you that live in city limits, they could be levying $4.05 to build roads and gutters and curbs. Same calculation. If the county needs to build a new jail, a new sheriff's station, same calculation. If the community college wants to build new dormitories, same calculation. Doesn't matter if you're in Des Moines or here or Sioux City, all the same. So if you have a residential home, that's the top section, so that means a house that's here in town or also all of the houses that are out in the country. So whether it's a farmhouse or an acreage, they're treated the same way. Of course, if you live in the country, you may have a large amount of property around your house. It's only a small bit of land that the house is sitting on that is treated as the residential property, and then the rest of that property is then going to be agricultural. But it's the same whether you live in town or out in the country. I will use $100,000 as the example because it makes the math a little bit easier. Many people, if you own a $100,000 home, would immediately think that $4.05 applied to that $100,000 home, because we're always talking about $1,000 increments of property value or mills. You would immediately think $4.05 times 100,000s is $405. And that absolutely makes sense, and it seems like the very logical answer, but it's wrong. Because here in Iowa, we have something called rollback, which is very unusual, but what it does is it reduces the taxability of your property. That number changes every year. It is set, or usually around December for the following fiscal year by the legislature. This current fiscal year, if you own residential property, you are paying taxes on 54.13% of the assessed value. And I want to keep making the note, this is the assessed value. It is never the market value, not the market value. We never, ever, ever, ever talk about market value because it plays no role in property taxation. So that $100,000 house that you own, you might be able to sell it for $115,000 because maybe you've really kept your house up very nicely, you've done some improvements on it, the county assessor doesn't know you did some of the improvements or doesn't take it into account. Whatever the county assessor says the assessed value of your property is, that's what is going to be taxed, or that's the beginning of the tax calculation, regardless of what you think you can sell that property for. And the same is true. If your house is an absolute dive, you just come in and just throw stuff everywhere and it's just been rotting for the last 50 years, maybe your house could only be sold for $80,000. But again, if the county assessor has never come inside of your house to see the condition, it may still be assessed for $100,000. And you're going to pay taxes on that $100,000 value. So it could be either way, good or bad. So we begin with the assessed value. So that $100,000 home is going to be taxed at 54%. And if it is your primary residence, which here in Gladbrook, I don't think there are a lot of vacation houses or lake houses or second homes, but there are certainly apartment homes or apartment buildings. So if it's the house you live in the primary portion of the year, you almost certainly have gone to the county courthouse when you purchased that house and filed for homestead credit. And if you have never done that, tomorrow, go to the county and file for homestead credit. It's going to reduce the taxable value of your house by $4,850. Now that does not mean that you get a $4,850 reduction in taxes. It means you get the value of your house before the tax rate is applied is reduced by that $4,850. So ultimately, that $100,000 home is being taxed for $49,280. So that's 49.28, talking about $1,000 increments, 49.28 times the $4.05, or about $199, basically $200 a year, or about $16 a month that you would be expected to pay in addition to what you've been accustomed to paying. That's what would be bringing the school district that $20+ million to build the projects. And there's multi-residential shown here, the second section. I'm not going to talk about that because that class of property is going away at the end of this year. That has been grandfathered down. If you own an apartment building, or maybe some of the older buildings downtown that have an upstairs apartment or something like that, that used to be taxed completely at commercial property. Several years ago, the legislature changed that, and they made those types of apartment structures taxed as residential. But before it's fully residential, it went through this stepping down as what's called multi-residential. This is the last year of it. So next year, any kind of apartment structure, nursing home, apartment building, etc., it'll just be treated as residential property. Then there's commercial property. So you don't have a ton of commercial property, at least here in Gladbrook, but you do have some. And if you're a commercial property owner, you know what I'm going to say. And that is that the commercial property owners, they're the ones that are truly paying the full brunt of any type of tax increase. There is rollback on their property, but it's only 10%. So they get they're paying taxes on 90%. So this is the barber shop, the flower shop, the grain elevator, the bank, Casey's, all of those types of structures. So if you own a business or a commercial property that is assessed at $100,000, you're paying taxes on $90,000. So it's 90 times the 405, $364 a year to generate this $20+ million for the school district. And then the bottom half of that page, so the bottom half of the page is referencing agricultural land. So again, it's very important that we understand we are never talking about the market value. That is very important with commercial property and residential property, but it is extremely important if we're talking about agricultural land, because the difference between market value and assessed value and taxable value it's a great difference. So you see up at the very top, it says Tama, Blackhawk, Marshall, and Grundy. So you have property within this school district in all 4 of those counties. And the number you see, 1489, 1486, 1707, and 1836, that is the average assessed value of 1 acre of agricultural land in each of those counties this year. Now, it's not $25,000. Somebody, I think in Grundy County last year sold their land for the record amount of $25,000 per acre. If it was any of you, it wasn't, because I think it was in Grundy Center, but in Grundy County. But those people, whether it's the people that sold the land or the people that bought the land, they're not paying taxes on $25,000 of value. It's more likely that that land was assessed at $1,836 or something around that number. So if you own average Grundy County land that's assessed for $1,836, you're not paying taxes on that either, because there is rollback on ag land. Ag land is being assessed, or excuse me, taxed at 89.04% of its assessed value this year. So that 1,836 average Grundy County acre is actually being taxed at $1,635. So again, we're talking about $1,000 increments. So that's 1.635 times the $4.05 comes out to be in Grundy County $6.62 per acre per year, or about 55 cents per month per acre. Now then there's this section that's down here. This is using the Grundy County, and I'm using it only because it's the highest number, so this is kind of the worst case scenario. But if you own property, ag land in Grundy County, you can see, I just put on there some examples of varying numbers of acres. I'm going to talk about 320 acres. No reason really, other than that's perhaps kind of a family farm-ish level of acres. I'm not talking about those of you, if there are any of you in the room that are owning 15, 20,000 acres. There are some people like that, certainly. They're going to pay a lot more in taxes, absolutely. But I'm talking about the average one of us. The average $100,000 home. The average $100,000 commercial property. Or maybe the average-ish 320 acres of agricultural land. So that person that owns 320 acres would be expected to pay about $2,100 per year more than what they've been paying in order to generate this $20+ million. And now in all of these cases, residential property, commercial property, and this agricultural property, I'm not suggesting that those tax increases are minimal or that they're nothing or that you should just take it and be fine with it. There's still tax increases and they're still material to many people. They aren't to some, they are to others. That's not the point. The point is right here. If you or your neighbor or your grandpa or your cousin is an agricultural landowner and you mistakenly calculated this tax using the market value, you might have used $11,724. That is what Iowa State University Ag Extension claims that an average market value of 1 acre of ag land is in Grundy County. So if you did do that, use the market value instead of the assessed in order to get to the taxable value, and you took that divided by $1,000, because I kept harping at you to divide it by $1,000, so you get 11.72 multiplied times the $4.05 tax, $47.48 per acre per year. And if you own 320 acres, you might have dreamt up that tax increase was $15,000 a year. It is not $15,000 a year. It is $2,118 for 320 acres if it's average land, if it's in Grundy County, and of course if it's in the school district. Grundy County land that's in Grundy Center and elsewhere, they don't pay this tax because they're in a different school district. But if you hear somebody whether they're talking to you at the coffee shop or you see it on Facebook or somewhere else, that is claiming that this bond issue is going to cost them $15,000 a year, they either don't know what they're talking about, they're mistaken, we all make mistakes, or they do know what they're talking about, and they're intentionally intending to mislead you. We all know that happens too, right? It's what I call the real fake news, when people are miscommunicating what is very simple to calculate yourself. Or maybe it's true. But guess what? They gotta own over 2,000 acres of land, and certainly some of you do. So I'm not discounting that doesn't happen, but that's not the average person. So know the facts, do the math. You don't even have to know this worksheet.
So
to be
the
honest.
average person should be happy to pay $2,000.
No, that's not what I said.
That's exactly what you're saying.
No, I'm not. I'm saying don't believe 15,000. If you were going to go vote no because you thought it was 15,000, that is incorrect. Some people would say 2,000 I can afford. I believe this project is warranted, and I think 2,000 is a realistic amount. But if they mistakenly believed it was 15,000, that would certainly cause lots of people to vote no because they didn't understand what the true impact was. That's what this is about. That's what I'm talking about. I didn't say that you should be happy paying 1 penny more. Every one of you has your own prerogatives, your own beliefs, and that is what it's all about. That's why we have the benefit in this country to vote yes or no. I'm not saying vote yes or no. I'm saying vote based off of this number if you own 320 acres. I'm saying vote on one of the other numbers if you own commercial or residential property or what have you. Don't let other people lie to you. That's what's happening. Not in this district only. Do you think I'm lying to you?
I don't believe a word you're saying.
Okay, can I ask you what your name is and what, because what I'd like to do is tomorrow when I go back to Des Moines, and I can do this, any one of us can look on the assessor's website, right? I will look up all of the parcels of land that you own, and I will show this entire school district exactly to the penny how much your tax will be. Can I do that?
Fine, but you're taking up all the time when nobody here is gonna be able to answer any questions if they want.
No, I said I will stay here all night. I will stay all
Wait
night.
for now, I'm asking the question.
Yeah, he says he's quitting at
The school
7:45.
board, you know?
Okay, I will stay out in the parking lot all night if you need to ask more questions about this. What I'm telling you is true. If you don't believe what I'm telling you, here's how easy it is. Go home tonight. You haven't probably gotten your new tax bill. That's coming in a couple weeks. Okay, so your treasurer's ahead of the game. I haven't got mine. So what you should do is take that sheet. It has on there, it shows you the assessed value and it shows you the taxable value. So you don't have to care about all this crap. Just say, look what the taxable value is, divide it by 1,000, and multiply it times $4.05. That's the number. That's it. It's that simple. If you are an ag land owner and you own 50 parcels of land, then take all 50 tax bills, add them up, divide it by 1,000, and multiply it times $4.05. That's how simple it is. If that number is too much, then vote no. But don't vote no because you didn't understand. That's what I'm here for tonight. Okay. I have one more thing. Yep, I have one more thing. It's not up here, but because I literally have seen this in your communications around your district that someone is publishing, I want you to understand how much debt your municipalities have that you are responsible for. This is debt that you are paying property taxes for. So the sales tax bonds, that doesn't count because I'm paying for some of that, you're paying for some of that. There's no property tax included. Now this includes all the cities that are within your school district, Blackhawk County, Grundy County, Marshall County, Tama County, just the portions of those counties that your school district is in, so it's a pro rata portion. Iowa Valley Community College, and Central River Area Education Agency. Some of those municipalities have debt, and some of them do not. But when we determine how much of that debt is attributable to you, the people that live in this school district, and if we assume that the bond issue passes, because that $20+ million bond is property tax backed, so it would count. According to the 2020 census, you have 3,990 citizens living in this school district. I don't know if that's correct, that's what the census says, so that's what we live by. With that debt, the direct debt, there's $5.5 million of debt that those other municipalities, the city, the county, the community college, they have that is attributed to you. Adding that to your debt, it would work out to be $7,359 per citizen. Not, some of you have seen it, I think it was $17,000 or $19,000 or $20,000. That's not true. You can look up the records, people. Don't believe everything you're reading. That number